This is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Jerry Potter, professional radio personality for 20 years and social media marketer for 10 years, who's taken all of his knowledge and experience and used it to turn traditional podcasting on its head with a new approach that he calls modcasting. Basically, the idea is it's a faster, easier way to podcast that makes it accessible for everyone. I'm super excited about this because I'm a podcaster myself, so I can tell you I love it, but it's a ton of work. So, with that, welcome, Jerry. Thanks a lot for joining us.
You put all that so well. Now I have to live up to how good you made that sound. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So I know you're going to be sharing some pretty cool tips with us and stuff, and we obviously want to talk a lot about what you're doing now with it. But I just have to start with your background. I'm really curious to see how did you get into radio as a start, and what was that like?
Well, I grew up as an introvert, so it was probably one of the most unlikely careers for somebody to have. But my high school that was down the street from my house had a 30,000 watt radio station. And so it was just an elective you could take. And even then, it just sounded like, it sounded more fun than some of the other, like painting or things like that. But I had no expectation that I would be able to turn it into a career. And this is going to sound really bad, but there was another guy who was a year ahead of me, and he got this full-time job in Seattle, which was a major market, like right out of high school. And I had this awful thought, which I feel guilty about thinking, but I was like, well, I think I'm better than him. If he can do it, then I can do it. And sometimes that is that moment of belief we need for anything we're trying to pursue, especially as entrepreneurs. We have to believe it's possible or we'll never take the steps to do it. And so from there, I got part-time jobs and then full-time jobs. And, radio was an incredible experience. Met my wife, everything all happened through that.
Nice. So where were you? Where were you actually doing your shows or your broadcast from?
So for most of my career, my wife and I actually hosted a morning radio show together for 15 years. And so we worked in Seattle, in New York, in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then Madison, Wisconsin, which is a really cool city. So we kind of hopped around a bit, which tends to be part of having a career in an industry like that, where there are only so many jobs in a city. Fortunately, that's changed now. Now you can almost work from anywhere and anyone can be a media company. From anywhere, which is really, really nice. But back then, you had to go where the work was.
Yeah, I've actually heard that myself. I know they used to run ads on our local radio for some kind of a broadcasting school that you could go to.
Mm.
And some of the guys would go on there and they'd say, I'm a local radio personality. There's somebody that everybody knew, but they'd say, this is where I got my start. It was the school that they went to. So they went to, it was post high school, but they went to like a specialty school for that. And that's what they would say. Well, I was starting overnight doing the 1 a.m. show out of, Tuscaloosa or whatever. And then now they're up in the New York area, but it didn't start that way because, right, you sort of went where the work was and took the jobs that you could get. So that's fascinating. But what a cool way to even sort of discover that career, because I think that sometimes when we get exposed to something, it sort of strikes that nerve, and we say, geez, maybe that's something we could do. And to your point that you made about seeing somebody doing something that you might want to do, and you say to yourself, well, I'm going to compare myself. I think I could probably do it as well. We all do that. I mean, you've seen somebody in any walk of life and you say, I know I could do that if they could do it. And it's not always the case, but it's great to have that belief and that thing that gets you going there. So,
oh yeah, sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we're totally wrong. Like I remember going to see stand-up comedians and thinking like, oh, I could do better than that. And then trying to go to an open mic night and completely collapsing and freezing on stage and, one of the worst experiences of my life. And it's like, never mind. That's really hard. I'm really impressed with people that do that.
yeah, that's incredible. That would have always scared me. I'm not afraid to talk in front of people, but comedy, I always found hard. It's one of those things that if I hear comedy, I know whether I like it, but I can't really define or mimic exactly how it. some things you can see and then you can model it and you say, oh,
Yeah.
well, that'll work. But you can't really steal somebody else's jokes. So, or their timing, you can learn that, I
Yeah.
guess, a little bit. But yeah, there's definitely an art to it. So then what happened? I know at some point in your career, you hit a bump in the road. You had some kind of issues in terms of some struggles and such. So if you don't mind sharing, what was sort of the turning point for you where you went from where you were to currently what you're doing now?
Well, it really happened because I got fired 3.5 times in about 6 years. And I'll explain the halftime thing here in a second. But the last 5 years that I was in radio, my wife and I got let go from our jobs 3 times. And it was never because, I mean, the ratings were good. There was no scandal with HR, like nothing. It was just, we're changing the format or we're going to play music now or, never our fault. And that's a very scary feeling. And during that time, we became parents, and it's an even scarier feeling when you're having to feed other mouths and things like that. And so, after it happened 3 times in 5 years, we thought, okay, maybe it's time to look for some other things. And my wife actually stayed in radio for a while after that, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And I had a friend point out, I was like, how do I translate this? What am I going to translate this to? And I had a friend go, you've been a content creator for 20 years. Everybody needs content now. This was around 2015. And it was like this light
Mhm.
bulb moment like, I am a content creator. I was a content creator before we talked about content creators. Wow. And so I got a job at a startup agency. I made this dorky video to get their attention and it managed to get in the door and we clicked and they created a position for me. But then along the way there one day, it was growing. They were bringing on new clients. We were supposed to go out for this celebratory lunch. And I'll never forget this. My boss and I, and she said, we're bringing on these new clients. They're bigger than any of the ones we have. And I said, oh my God, this is amazing. Congratulations. And who's going to manage these new clients? She said, well, I need you to manage them. And I thought, well, I'm already working over 40 hours a week. We talked about work-life balance when you hired me. And she said, I need you to take on these clients or I can't keep paying you. And I just thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job again. And so I had to figure out how to get efficient. And that was the catalyst for me figuring out how to do more things in less time. And that's what led to me starting my YouTube channel to teach other people to do marketing and content marketing specifically in less time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think sometimes it is either a crisis or a problem that initially seems existential or such a big issue that ultimately is the catalyst that gets us to look at things in a different way and say, you know what, I'm going to step back from this. I'm so engrossed in what I'm doing that I'm just sort of doing it. But now I'm forced to look at it in a different way. So I have to figure out some different solutions about the way. I know, in my own entrepreneurial career, that's happened to me a number of times. I've had things going and then there'd be some sort of a seismic shift, whether it was in the industry or the products that I was dealing with or whatever. And I said, geez, at the time it was terrible, but sometimes it ended up being a blessing in disguise because you come out the other side of it, you're doing something different and you've evolved in some ways, which is really cool. So so you started off doing a YouTube channel. So I'm curious because I know from a content marketing standpoint, right? A lot of people that are looking to get into social media or looking to get into podcasting or whatever. One of the concerns there is that when they're trying to do that undertaking, is that pressure to constantly be producing something. They're told over and over and over again that it isn't about just having great content. You've got to be able to constantly pump out new stuff all the time because it's such a disposable world we live in technology, especially on the social media platforms. Stuff is there for 15 minutes and then everyone's forgotten about it. So, what do you see as the problems with the typical ways of trying to do that? I mean, if you're trying to create content, are there issues with that, you think, or you just have to sort of suck it up and do that?
Well, I mean, we're kind of in this great space where content has never been easier to create, especially with some of these new AI tools. But at the same time, that means more people are creating content than ever. And so standing out can sometimes be the challenge with that. But when it comes to traditional podcasting, the reason you mentioned sort of that trial by fire, that thing that made you figure out, oh my gosh, I've got to figure out a new way to do things. My income dropped 70% in 4 months from the end of 22 to 2023. And I ended up starting a weekly live show instead. It wasn't going to be a podcast. It was going to be a weekly live show. And I used the way we built our radio shows to plan the live show. And I wanted to nurture people more, build trust, and hoping that that would speed up the buying cycle. I had raised my prices, and at first sales were good, and then they weren't. And so, again, another scary time. And so initially it was a ton of work, but it was helping me generate more leads and convert them and things like that. And the live show became a podcast, and all my social media content. And so this method that we teach now, which I'm happy to share anything about that you want to know about, but it came from, again, one of those scary, scary moments. And it started as a lot of work. And then I realized it doesn't have to be that much work. And so the most important thing, and whenever we work with somebody, if anything you were doing, if you were starting a YouTube channel, a podcast, anything like that, the very first thing, and this is something that podcasters tend to skip all the time, is what is your objective for this show? Like, what is the number one thing that you want? And we'll usually pull up a list of things, when we work with people, and they'll say, oh, I'll take all of those. But when we divide our focus, you get none of them, right? And so we say, okay, you got to pick one thing. Like, what is the most important thing here? Is it to build your authority? Is it to generate leads? Is it to become your social media content? Is it for networking? Is it to grow your audience? Is it to grow your personal brand? Is it to grow your YouTube channel, right? There's all these things that a podcast, for example, can do. And we're like, we got to pick one. And then we build around that. And I think whether it is YouTube or other social media or a podcast, the biggest mistake I see is people skip that step. And they go in just kind of going, yeah, I'm going to increase my brand awareness. I'm going to sell products. I'm going to do all of these things. And if we don't measure against something, it's really hard to improve.
Yeah, I think that's great advice just in general from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed, over my own entrepreneurial career, and when I coach other people or work with them, is that oftentimes it's the same thing, right? They start, and the idea is they have this vision of where it's going to be at the end, and the vision includes all the bells and whistles.
Yes.
And so they want to build them all at once. Well, I'm gonna have a high ticket product. I'm gonna have a recurring membership. I'm gonna do software, and I'm gonna do this. And it's like, okay, you've got to, that it's great to have a vision where you're going to build this out into an ecosystem or this, entire empire. But at the same time, if you try incrementally to build the entire thing out with that wide of a platform to begin with, the likelihood that you're going to succeed is almost zero, because it's hard enough when you're focused on one thing to be able to make it go and make it work. So I guess the question that comes to mind for me is, so you had all these options because you understood content, you understood content creation and marketing. So why did you specifically focus on podcasting as sort of the medium and YouTube? Was it just because your background was radio, or was there something more from the market standpoint that you thought made a lot more sense?
It wasn't because my background is radio. I mean, that would make sense, except I really don't consider radio and podcasting to be the same medium at all. There's a lot of differences between them, but there are definitely things I did and learned in radio that, we now apply to podcasting. So the reason I ended up there, and it's very much where we've gotten in terms of technology and humans and all of this kind of stuff, that I think that podcasting is the best opportunity right now. And it basically comes down to three things. One is consumer behavior. Podcasts have been around. I think I had my first one when we were in radio still in 2005. So we're, it's 20 years. We're 20 years into podcasting, but we're still in the infancy of podcasting. It's still growing. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you compare the number of active YouTube channels to the number of active podcasts, podcasting is 99.996% less competitive than YouTube right now.
Whoa,
which is insane, right, to think about, right? There's, for active podcasts, it's I don't think it's 480,000 active podcasts or something, and then just millions of active YouTube channels. So the first thing, though, is consumer behavior. Podcasts are still growing. The second part of this that makes it just, we've gotten to this great place for this, is that it's what platforms want now works well with podcasting. So one of the hardest things about podcasting has always been growing the show. And what I've always heard people teaching is create great content and people will find you. And you know, I want to grow faster. I want to grow in week one. I don't want to
Yeah.
wait for somebody to maybe share an episode or something like that. And you know, the on social media, and this is where the other part of my background comes in. On social media, we have this great type of content that regularly gets shown to people who don't know who we are yet, and that is short form videos. And so that could be TikTok videos, Facebook and Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and now LinkedIn is even adding short form videos. And it's growing, and they haven't said we're all in on it yet. And you know, LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft moves slowly, but it looks like even that's where it's headed on LinkedIn. And by default, this is content that's designed to be shown to people who don't know who you are yet. So we can finally reach new people without waiting for shares or spending money on ads. So we haven't had this until recently. So there's a way to grow your show faster. And then the third thing is that tech is making it so accessible for everyone. We have these, you know, transcript-based editing programs where if you can edit a Word document, you can edit an audio or a video podcast. We have all these AI tools. We have things, you know, the incredible software that runs in a web browser, you know, that 10 years ago you would have had to have this like high-end computer to even, you know, do it. You know, they sell microphones at Target now. Like this, everything has gotten easier and cheaper and more affordable. And so those three things together, I think, just make it an incredible opportunity. But the main reason, to get back to what your question was, that I chose it is because with a podcast, or modcast as we call them, you can reach people where they are. So if they like video, you've got a video podcast. If they like audio, you've got an audio podcast. And then you can pull written content and short form videos out of it in a very efficient way. As opposed to, I don't have time, even though I'm a YouTuber, I don't have time to watch a lot of YouTube. I listen to podcasts all the time though. And I found in my research, it's very polarizing. Some people love video, some people love audio. And so one piece of content can be all the places. And that is the biggest opportunity, I think, for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And you know, the other thing about podcasting, I'll tell you, one of the things that drew me to it is the fact that it's so consumable. You know, so many
Mhm.
of the other social media things, if you can get people to engage with your content for seconds, that's not bad. Minutes is like amazing. You know, and whereas with a podcast, if you have good content, then in general you can get people to listen for a lot longer. And I think, you know, advertisers are realizing this as well. They're saying, well, geez, you know, if we were to advertise on podcasts where there's a relationship between the person who's doing the show and the audience, and they're engaged and they're listening to what they're saying, then, you know, if they're going to recommend our product or service, there's value in that. Um, and I think, you know, it's hard because when I look at some of the social media, platforms, some of the stuff that the content feels, it's so curated, it's almost fake because
Hmm.
it's so overproduced. And the other thing I always liked about the platform of a podcast, because when I was deciding what I was going to do, I chose podcasts, and for me, it's the authenticity factor. I like the
Yeah.
fact that you can just go on and you can talk with people, or you can do an episode where you want to share some information that you have, and the fact that people can consume it anywhere is just awesome because you can do other things while you're doing it. Pretty hard to watch a YouTube video while you're driving your car.
Yeah. Well, and especially if you
Particularly,
are targeting busier people, which often are, you know, high, like if you sell higher ticket stuff, you're often targeting busier people that are never going to have time to sit down and watch YouTube unless they're trying to, you know, look up plumbing to fix a sink on the weekend, but they have time to consume podcasts. And so, yeah, it
and
makes a
I've done
massive
that, by the
difference.
way.
Yeah.
I've looked up a lot of those little tutorial videos. I've become a lot more handy than I used to be. So at least
Yeah.
my wife thanks YouTube.
I love it.
So, all right. So I know that there are a lot of people out there. I've actually met a bunch of these people that they get the value of podcasting, they get the value of a YouTube channel, but they're nervous. They're worried about putting themselves out there publicly, right? I don't know what I'm going to say or how I'm going to look, and what if people don't like me. When it's your voice or your face and you're so visible, what advice would you give to somebody that has that sort of reservation about it?
It's absolutely I have feeling I have had many times in my life. Sometimes I think when I worked as a radio personality and I basically earned a living based on people liking who I was, I think that was probably psychologically damaging in a lot of ways. But I had a friend actually a few years ago. Her name's Chelsea. And I was hesitating to do something or put something out. And she said this amazing phrase. She said, "Don't let your insecurities get in the way of helping the people who need you." And it was just this like, eye-opening moment. Like, I am so selfish right now, right? So whatever you do in your business, if you solve a problem and people need help solving this problem, we're actually being selfish by not putting ourselves out there. Now, that being said, it's still scary. Okay. So it's kind of a mindset shift there, but it's still scary. But the second thing that I'll say is, as somebody who's been on YouTube for a number of years, and even when we worked in radio, we'd get complaints sometimes and stuff like that. And I never took it well. We actually had a rule in radio. I was not allowed to answer the phone. I could only talk to pre-screened calls, because if somebody called and complained about me in the middle of the show, I was derailed. But I always tell people now, hurt people hurt people. And so usually if you get a complaint, an insult, I've been told that my eyes are not the same size. Now I'm going to challenge you not to look at my eyes and to try and figure it out. But, I have big teeth, like all these different things. And so a lot of the time when somebody complains, they are just going through something much, much worse. And so I've had to, develop thicker skin and move on. But again, don't let that prevent you from getting out there and helping the people who need your help.
I think that's great advice. And for me, I know also, I mean, look, I had some reservations about it, and I was never on radio, but I did a lot of videos. I've done a lot of trainings. I've done in-person stuff. So I wasn't afraid of the public speaking element of it, but it's weird because there's no audience feedback in real time. So
Yeah.
it can be a little bit scary. But the thing of it is, the other piece of advice that I always share is, you're not going to be good in the beginning. That's okay.
Yeah.
The only way, I mean, when you learn to ride a bike, you didn't get on a bike the first time, ride down the street, around the block, start doing wheelies and come back home. You went 3 feet, fell, skinned your knee, got up and said, okay, well, I'm not going to turn the wheel like that anymore. I'm going to try to and eventually you figured it out. And I think, like any other skill or any other thing that we do over and over again, we get better and better the more we do it. And the only way to get there is through, right? The only way through,
Yeah.
you have to get that experience. You have to just try it. And so you just take the plunge and don't worry about what the older episodes are going to be. There'll be a day where you can look back and laugh at those. So
Yeah.
the fact is, you're never going to get to where you want to be if you don't get started. And so, but I really like, your advice on that. I think that's really good. So what about audio versus video podcasts? So I know, some people say, like with video podcasts, the great thing is you can benefit from SEO and this other stuff. This flip side is then you got to look good because you're on camera. It's not the same as just speaking into a mic where you're sort of in your pajamas.
Totally. Yeah. So the way I like to talk about this when somebody has that video objection, the first part is that audio podcasts and video podcasts can both help you reach your goals. But I look at them like a sports car versus a jet. They will both get you from LA to New York, but the jet's going to get you there faster. And then it's going to take you to London and Sydney and Bangkok and wherever else you want to go. Just adding video accelerates trust. It gets you in more places. There are so many benefits to that. As my friend Ben Amos, who specializes in video, I used to always say, video builds trust. He says, video supercharges the human connection. And I was like, oh, that's so much better of a phrase than builds trust. And so it will get you everywhere you want to go so much faster. And when it comes down to it, like I said, the tech has gotten much easier for video, but there's a few misconceptions. Like some people think, oh, video, I'm going to have so much more editing. Well, we edit my video podcast. I hired my friend's daughter to do it. Takes her about 10 minutes. We use Descript. We go in, we trim off the back, we trim off the front. And unless somebody had a coughing fit in the middle, we just leave it as is. It's real, right? Then we slap on the intro, a few graphics, and we're done. And because of these transcript-based editors we have, you can edit a video podcast and an audio podcast in about the same amount of time, as long as you're willing to let go of some of your perfectionist tendencies. I'm a recovering perfectionist myself, so I get it. But so that's one part. But the other part, and this is the part that I don't think people factor in. I know a lot of audio podcasters, and they're like, "Oh, video would be so much more work." And I'll say, "Okay, so tell me about how you do your podcast." And they say, "Oh, well, we sit down, we, record the episode. Some people will batch a month's worth in a single day or whatever it might be, which is a great way to go." Then I say, "Okay, cool. Then how do you promote your episodes and how do you promote your business?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I make 3 reels a week on Instagram and Facebook and 2 TikToks a week and all this kind of stuff." And if you're recording your audio podcast and then you're turning around and recording all this social media content on video, you're already doing the video at that point. And that actually takes more time, because what we teach with our Modcast marketing system is create a show that you already know what the content is going to be, that is going to become all of your short form video content, your social media content. So what we want to see you do is literally record your episode. And, the way I talk about it sometimes is like, record your episode or record a month's worth in a day. And then you don't have to shower for 29 days. Okay. You don't have to be camera ready for 29 days. All your content is done. Stink up as much as you want, and then come back and do it again. So that's what we try and encourage people to kind of see, that a lot of them are already making it harder than it needs to be. And with, approaching it in this way, you never have to film anything else after your episode.
Yeah, I love that. And it's definitely the reason, because I started off as pure audio,
Mm-hmm.
and I started working with somebody who was going to do the marketing side of things. And the first thing he said to me is, shoot these as videos. He said, just shoot them as videos, because if you do that, you can repurpose that everywhere you need. And obviously then you get all the benefits of being in all multiple mediums as well, or multiple
Yeah.
platforms. And so that makes a lot of sense to do it that way. That's really smart. So yeah, I definitely want to ask you some more specific questions about your modcasting, but I have another question too, relative to what people say in terms of an issue they have with the podcast. And we touched on this in the beginning, and that is, so the other concern people have is, all right, so now I'm going to start building this. And then what? It's going to take me 3 years. I mean, I see these people on Reddit, and they're going back and forth, and it's like, well, I've been doing my podcast for 2.5 years. I'm up to like 37 downloads an episode. Is that good? And, other people are like, yes, or, oh, no, you should have been. But even still, the numbers that they're talking about for the amount of work they've put in, if you saw that, you would say to yourself, geez, I don't think I want to do this.
Yeah.
So what's your advice or your reaction to the idea that it does take a long time to be able to build a following or get any traction with it?
A lot of the stuff that's out there right now is, like we said, build that quality content over time. Your audience will find you after you have 100 episodes, 2 years in, if you publish weekly, then you can monetize. And I think you can and should try and monetize from the very first episode. We had one client that put out 170 episodes of her podcast, never knew if she got anything from it. She just loved it. And so we kind of reformatted her show. And within a couple of months, she'd sold out all her one-on-one slots, started a wait list, and was starting a group program. And so you can design it in this way. We had another client who teaches essential oils, and she started a podcast about that, and she wanted to sell her book. Well, we always hear you can't sell directly from a podcast, right? You have to send them to your email list, give them a freebie or whatever it might be. Well, her first episode, she sold a book the same day that the episode came out. And so I don't like people to hold on to that belief that it's going to take that long. If you create a show that is solving a problem somebody has, and then you're able to demonstrate that next piece they need and show them in a convincing way, you could have one listener, and if it's the right person, you'll get a sale. And the other thing I like to tell about this is I did an episode last year, and I pulled clips out like we usually do, and I put one up as an Instagram reel. Well, for whatever reason, this Instagram reel with the guest and I took off. Last I checked, it had reached over 30,000 people. I only have about 4,000 followers on Instagram. And when I looked at the insights, it only reached about 300 of my followers. But here was 30,000 people that didn't know who I was yet. And some of them went and listened to the podcast, But another woman I saw signed up for one of my signature programs, and I said, "Oh, we always ask, where did you hear about Jerry Potter?" And she said, "Oh, I saw a reel on Instagram with you and this other person." She knew exactly what it was. So once she joined and we had a conversation, I said, "Hey, did you then go like listen to the episode? I always want to know, right?" And she goes, "Oh no, I never listened to the episode. I just saw that clip and then I looked you up and then I signed up all in the same day." So that's how I made $1,000 from someone who never even, from my podcast, from someone who never even bothered to listen to the episode. So, but we have to
Yeah.
remove this belief that it takes 100 episodes to monetize.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It's a great story that you share too, because I think it makes it real for people instead of just saying, "Well, you could in theory," because I know, for a lot of places, if you were to go and look for like an agency to take you on or whatever, they want big numbers before they're even going to consider doing that. And so I think that's probably part of where that mentality comes from. They think, well, geez, if I'm going to go get ads sold or I'm going to do this or try to sell my products, I mean, if I don't have a big following, but I read in one place and I don't remember where it was, but it always stuck with me. Somebody who is podcasting said, when I started off and I got to a point where I was getting like 30 downloads or 30 whatever it was, they said I was thinking about that as a number, and I was saying, it doesn't seem like a lot. And people would say, well, geez, really need to pump those numbers up. And he or she said, but what I was envisioning is every time that I'm in front of the microphone or the camera, I'm in front of a room of 30 people that are all listening to
Yes.
what I have to say. I mean, there's
Yes.
power in that. It doesn't always have to be a massive list or a massive reach in order to get results. And I think that's a really powerful message, for sure. So,
Yeah.
go for it. Did you have
Oh,
something?
I was going to say 100% agree. And again, we just have to know who our perfect person is, give them value, and then offer them something that might be their next step. And podcasts are one of the best mediums to do that because you're never going to take somebody from stranger to buyer in a 15-second Instagram reel, right? Like there's got to be more there to it. And this is how it all works together so beautifully because we have these multiple tools that can work together now. And I don't want anyone waiting to monetize. Occasionally, our clients will say, yeah, I've only gotten this many downloads. And I'll say, well, how many leads did you get? Did you get any clients? And all of a sudden their tone changes. They're like, oh, yeah, yeah. Social media is the same way, just like podcasts. We get these numbers that shoved in our face that don't really matter compared to the other things. Now, if you have 30 downloads a week and you know that you get 3 leads a week from those 30 downloads, then by all means, try and grow to 50 or 70 because now you have something that converts.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's the key, right? It's not so much the number. At the end of the day, a gazillion listeners, if they aren't taking any action or they aren't engaged in a way where it's going to do anything for you, unless your only goal was to build the largest number that you could brag about, then what is the
Yeah.
what's the point anyway? So
Yeah.
so what do you say about people that have questions about content, right? Because the other thing I hear is, okay, well, I'm going to start a podcast, but I've got my ideas and I've got 5 or 6 episodes that I could do, but then what do I do after that? Because I'm going to run out of ideas.
Yes, which is a very real concern. So there's a couple of parts of this. First, we recommend before you even name your podcast, and I know sometimes people start with the name. We always say there's so many things you should do before you finalize a name. You can have a name and an idea and it gets us excited and you register the domain or whatever it might be. But the first thing you should do is see how quickly you could write out at least 10 episode ideas. Because that it's funny that you said the number 5 or 6 or whatever it was, because so often people are like, oh, these are my first 5 or 6 episodes, and they literally don't know where they're going to go after that. And so if you can't do that, then you might need to, broaden what it's going to be or something along those lines. So that's the first thing there is just make sure before you jump into anything, you have a general idea of what it's going to be. But I'll tell you, the next thing around this is simply knowing exactly who your ideal person is and how you're trying to help them. So I have this, one of the big goals of my business is to give entrepreneurs time freedom. let them have a life. And I've heard you talk about this too, where it's not just, I mean, that's kind of what you're doing here, right? It's not just the business. And so I ask myself with every piece of content that I put out, and I've actually got it written on the whiteboard here, behind the camera, does this help online entrepreneurs create time freedom so they can pursue other things that give them purpose? And there are all kinds of things that fit into that. It's AI, it's automations, it's higher leverage tools like webinars, podcasts, YouTube channels, different things like that. And so I have a very specific person that I want to talk to, but there's lots of different ways that I can help them. And even if I make a piece of content about that, how many episodes are you up to with this show?
I'm over 300 now. I
Wow.
do
Okay.
dailies, five a week. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
So
So
not all
hopefully,
interviews. My first 9 months were all solos, and then I started doing
okay.
interviews because I said people are going to get tired of hearing my voice.
Well, hopefully you're going to go back, or hopefully you do go back and you go, wow, this episode did really well. Whether you got more downloads or you just got a lot of actually people reached out to you, which in podcasting is a big deal, then you made more episodes about that same topic. Nobody is ever going to go, unless you do 10 in a row on the same thing, nobody's ever going to go, he's already talked about this. And if they do, that means you have a super fan, and that's great. but they are not the masses. They are not, most, I always say, you are the only person who sees all your content, reads all your emails. And the other thing is people have to hear the same things over and over again before they're going to click, or they have to be ready. Or, we used to run contests in radio, and sometimes we would be doing $100,000 giveaway, and we promote it for 3 weeks before it started. Then we'd run it for 3 weeks, and sure enough, the day after it ended, somebody would call and say, hey, I just heard about that contest. When does it start? And I'm like, oh, we've been talking about it for 6 weeks. Really? I listen all the time. I never heard it. So we have to keep going back. It's going back to the hits, really, to use a radio analogy. Keep going back to the same topics over and over again.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, I'll tell you, I leave Easter eggs all the time because I'm always telling the same stories. There's a handful of stories, but if they apply to whatever content, then I like to share that story. And I know if that's the first time someone's hearing it, it's fine. And, they say anyway, if you look at anybody who's even, famous or whatever, they're always telling the same story, their origin story or their whatever the story is, because there's something engaging and magnetic about that. So there's value in it, right? It doesn't really matter if they've shared it more than once. Half the time you even know it and you're like, well, I'm going to listen to it again because I like it. So it's all good,
Yeah.
But right. Yeah. If someone's trolling you on that, then I suppose they must really be a super fan if they're like, hey, you told this story 3 weeks ago or 6 months ago.
Yeah. And we can't cater to just like, if you have a super fan, congratulations, but we can't cater to them. And I do see this a lot too, where entrepreneurs will cater to their like most rabid clients, the people who love them. And it actually makes us blind to what we need to be talking about to attract new people in some cases. So
yeah, I think that's smart. That's really good advice because it is easy to want to, go wherever you're getting the attention. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you're staying true to what you're trying to do because you want to attract a larger audience as well. So, all right. So what if someone's thinking, all right, I get it. This podcast thing is for me. You guys convinced me. So, but I am worried about how much work it is to be able to start and run a podcast. I think that's really where sort of your system comes in and the rubber meets the road, right? So can you tell us about it? Tell us, what it is and how it saves so much time.
yeah, so we call it modcasting. And the reason for that, just to go back really quick, when we were in radio, depending on the station we were on and how much music we played, like at one station, we literally would have to come up with 15 hours of content a week. That was all us talking. That's not counting commercials or music or anything like that, right? And so we didn't come to work on Monday after the Oscars and go, all right, we're going to talk about the Oscars for 15 hours this week, right? We had to come up with all of these different things. And so we built our show out of what we called modules. On TV, sometimes you'll hear them say, coming up in our next segment. So you could call them segments, if you will. And each module was designed to achieve a different goal for the show and the station. So one module might be designed to attract our perfect person, like that exact, like at one station, that 25 to 34-year-old woman that we were wanting to listen every day. Another module might be designed to get somebody to come back at the same time every day. So another module might be designed to get somebody to sign up for the station's email list. So each module was designed to do one thing, and then together they became this powerful overall brand, stronger than all the individual parts, that became more content on the air, online, and offline. So when I went to start this live show that became my podcast, that's the approach I took. I was like, okay, I'm not going to just turn on the mic and go, today I'm going to talk about YouTube and thumbnails and talk about that for a few minutes. So we built it in this way. And when I first did this and started teaching it, I thought people would say, wait, so I have to build all these different modules to build a show? Like, that sounds like more work. They didn't see it that way, and I still don't fully understand why. But essentially, you still have your main content, which we call your core content. That is the reason somebody, clicked on the episode. Nobody is going to, or you're not going to get big listens for, here's 5 random things I'm thinking about this week, other than your super fan, right? So you still have to have your core content, that thing, that reason that they clicked. But then we also have a module that we put at the end, and we have a special module we put at the beginning that we call the confirmation module, to reassure people that they're in the right place and get them to not only listen, but really lean in when they listen and listen closely. And so we build the show out of these modules, and then each module, as I said, is designed to become something else. So a couple of the modules might be designed to become Instagram Reels to grow your audience, because that's their objective. The core content might be designed to grow your authority and show people that you are really good at talking about what you are, or not talking about what you do, but you're really good at what you do, because they're hearing you talk about it. And another module might be designed to grow your community. And so it just becomes this very easy system. And a module-based podcast, it could be a 2-hour Joe Rogan podcast, or it could be 8 minutes, even with all these different modules. But it makes it easier to plan. It makes it easier to listen, easier to consume from the listener's standpoint. And the way that we show you is we say, hey, you can do this in about an hour a week. Now, I have one client who is a full-time, she homeschools her 3 kids. She's a college professor. She teaches 3 classes a week, and she runs her business on the side. And she got this process of planning the show, recording the show, editing, publishing, and pulling out all the social media clips and scheduling them down to 63 minutes. So she's, I think, the world record holder. And I always talk about her like she's going to take everything she's learned and do it better than we ever could. She's pretty amazing that way. But that being said, another way that we sometimes say you can free up time is let go of this idea that you have to publish every single week. I know you said you do 5 days a week, which is amazing, but let go of this idea. And that came out of my podcast because I was recording these episodes that I was like I'd finished recording and go, oh, that was so good. I can't wait to get it out. And I look at the calendar. I'm like, oh, it didn't come out for 2 months. And then it would come out and I'd promote it. And then another episode would be coming out, and then I have to turn and promote that. And I'm like, oh, but I should promote that last one again. It's so good. So we went to an every other week publishing schedule, and nobody's, if they want more, that's a good thing, right? Yeah. Like it's good if they want more of your podcasts.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, the main reason was I felt as though I really wanted to sort of get shot out of a cannon with it. I didn't want to incrementally build it and be a year in and be like, well, I've got 20 episodes.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I'm going to fail fast with this. I'm going to try a bunch of different things, see what works. And look, like anything, right? We have the ability to adapt, adjust what we do. So I've toyed with the idea of changing formats. In fact, the first 9 months that I was doing it, as I mentioned, I did solo episodes. I had a lot of content I wanted to get out, and I wanted to position myself by sharing what I knew. I was 17 years as an entrepreneur and sort of doing it on my own without a mentor. I was conscious of the fact that, I wanted to be that mentor for other people. But then I also realized the value of engaging other people and bringing them in. So that's why a couple of months ago, I started doing the interviews. So for me, yeah, it's all about whatever the audience, I think, wherever you can create the value that's going to matter for them, and the commitment level you can do with that is great. So That's a fascinating thing, and it's amazing to be able to do that much in that little time. So, where can people get more information about your modcasting or connect with you?
So after we started teaching this, we kind of looked at the podcasting industry and the way it's being taught, and we went, this is not like this is all wrong, especially for entrepreneurs. So we have a free class that you can take online to learn more about this module based approach and how we do it in about an hour a week and all of that. And so you can go to modcastmarketing.com/learn if you want to take that free class anytime. And then outside of that, if you search for Jerry Potter on YouTube, you'll find my channel, and we have lots of videos there specifically about helping entrepreneurs run their business in less time so that they can move on to other things that give them purpose.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks for that. And I have one last question that I always have to ask because I think it's important, and that is, what is your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Number one tip for success. You know, I think it's that when you're going to do something in your business, decide if it's important, or decide that it's important, or decide it's not. When I first started my YouTube channel, it was a hobby. I was working full time at an agency, but I said, I'm going to do this for a year. I'm going to publish a new video every week for 52 weeks. And had I not done that, I would have quit multiple times. It took me 6 months to get to 100 subscribers. And that was including friends and family and fake like Google accounts that I made to subscribe to my channel. So there were many times where I thought, this is too much work. I've got to quit. But I decided it was important, so I stuck with it. And 6 months, I had 100 subscribers. A month later, I had 1,000. And a year later, 10,000. So often I see entrepreneurs say, oh, I'm going to try Instagram. I'm going to try TikTok. I'm going to try a podcast. And then they just do it halfway. And I think it's a defense mechanism for us
Yeah.
to go, it didn't work, but I didn't really give it any effort, right? It makes failure sting less. But I think one of the most important things to do is decide something's important and do it, or decide it's not. And if you can't decide it's important, it probably isn't in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think when I decided to start mine, I said, I'm not worried about monetization or results or whatever. What I'm worried about is getting the process. What
Mm.
I was committing to was the process of being consistent and doing it. I said, I'll worry about all that other stuff down the road. I want to get this going. I want to get this message out. I'm going to do this for a year. I'm going to do, and I said, I know it's going to be a big commitment, but I definitely want to do that. And I said, and then I'll evaluate whether or not there's something better I should be doing or something different. But if you go into it with the attitude that you're half committed and that you're sort of anticipating or okay with something not working, you've basically failed before you started because you're not really committed to it.
Yeah.
Um, I talk to a lot of people, and one of the interesting themes that keeps coming up is these people that are completely down and out. I mean, they've lost this, they've lost that, they're down, and yet then they somehow rise from the ashes and make things go. And the thing that underpins all that is there weren't any choices left,
Yeah.
right? When they picked something and they decided I'm going with this, their back was against the wall. It wasn't like, well, if this doesn't work out, I'll just go do that, or maybe I'll go try that. And so I think that there's a lot of power in that sort of clarity and focus about what we're doing and commitment to it. So that's awesome.
Yes, and
Um,
I when I started my YouTube channel, I didn't have to do it. I had a full-time job at an agency, but I just, if I'm going to do something, I decide it's important and I'm going to do it. And I think that's just, we have to, not only will it make you much more likely to be successful, but when we get hiccups in whatever we're trying to do, if we believe it's going to work or we're committed to it, then it's just like, oh, Instagram crashed when I tried to upload my reel. I'll try it again later. But if we don't, then we just go, oh, Instagram is the worst. And then we don't post for 3 weeks. And so it really, optimism is a powerful thing for sure.
it definitely is. All right, so with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Jerry, so much for coming on, sharing your insights and great tips with us. Visit modcastmarketing.com/learn for a free masterclass on modcasting, a simple module-based approach to podcasting for entrepreneurs. Thanks for tuning in.